harsh, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So do you want me to start basically with what I just said?
Yes.
All right. FSBO is not for the weak of heart. There are absolutely things that you have to avoid. There's pros and cons to all of it, but you have to be infinitely curious in order to be a FSBO.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Invest Iowa. Today, I have Karen Whaley with me. We're going to talk about FSBOs, what that entails. Who should do FSBO? For sale by owner. That's what it stands for. And it pretty much means when you're not going through a real estate company, a brokerage, to sell your home. You can sell by yourself, right? You can list it yourself in different platforms that are available. But now we're going to go into detail and with the expert, because she's done it multiple times. And now I want to hear your perspective on who should do FSBO and who shouldn't. And by the way, thanks for coming. I completely forgot it.
You are welcome. Yes, FSBO is certainly a challenge for the vast majority of folks. There are lots of pieces and parts to the real estate process that are required, and you have to be willing to be curious enough and learn how to do those components. Everything from the preparation of the home itself, to the marketing of the home, to closing the deal, and knowing all of the legal components and the third parties that you have to use to get that done. Can you do it? Absolutely. Can you do it for less than paying a traditional real estate commission? Absolutely. But there are also some pitfalls that you have to be willing before you take on the challenge. Do you want to deal with those things? Do you want to learn and grow? And keep in mind the entire process is an emotional process. It is a home, not just a house, not just a property. And can you separate yourself from that emotional component because you don't have a real estate agent there to do that for you?
Did you have a full-time job when you were listing your house?
Yes, I did, and I always have. So that is another component. You have to have flexibility within whatever your traditional employment is or whatever your income is. You have to have a lot of flexibility because real estate is I want to go see it right now because it's an emotional thing, especially in a hot market or a seller's market. You have to be willing to drop everything and show up when needed. That said, there are other ways to do that. I've heard of FSBOs doing lock boxes on the door, just like a traditional real estate where you give them a code and they can get in and they can show themselves around. But even that, you have to be willing then to go make sure that after someone's been in that property, that the lights are off, that the heat's been turned down, that there's not something strange that has happened in that property in the midst of showing it. Because if somebody damages something, you kind of need to know at that point in time who it was. Or have security cameras to watch.
You know, let's get some bullet points. What would you say are the main concerns that a FSBO has to keep in mind?
The main concerns from my perspective that you have to keep in mind is flexibility. You have to be flexible. You have to understand the market you're in and how to price the property accordingly. Again, most people overvalue their property. You need to keep a very objective viewpoint of what truly is the property value. And then you have to understand that this is a legal binding contract. Make sure you understand and know what all of the legal components mean. And they're not always intuitive what exactly you're signing. When you sign a contract, what does that mean legally? What are you on the hook for legally? Because that's where your risk is at. But the process itself is fairly straightforward. You prepare the home, you market it, you show it, you receive offers, you respond to offers, and then you use a third-party title company and the financial institution of choice to close the deal.
Did you need a lawyer?
I would highly recommend a lawyer. Do you need one?
Why would you recommend it?
Not my previous life, but Chris's previous life. He's my better half. He did a for sale by owner property and he went directly to them. So there was no real estate agent involved at all. The seller did some things that they should not have. There was some legal binding contracts they needed to get out of it, and it cost them 10 grand to not live in that home.
Oh.
So there were some things that, because there was no lawyer involved, they needed out of that deal, and they had to take that FSBO to court to get out of that contract. So that's more from a buyer perspective of the FSBO, but you as a seller could be in that same spot. You want to make sure from a legal perspective, it is the largest purchase most people make. Why wouldn't you want to cover your butt?
How was this learning curve? Did it take you a long time to actually perfect the act of being a FSBO, for sale by owner?
Keep in mind that I've only done it twice.
Mm-hmm.
I will likely do it again. However, it's more about the upfront learning and making sure you're willing to take the time. There's plenty of videos and how-tos out there when it comes to FSBO. The pitfalls, again, the hardest part is being objective, removing yourself emotionally from your home. It's no longer your home. It's a house. It's a property. What is the value of that? Don't be offended when people are like, well, I don't like blah, blah, blah. They're not offending you. They're just looking at it from their perspective. The other part is the uncertainty or the ambiguity, but that's inherent in any real estate deal. Things can go well and quick, or things can have hiccups. And I would imagine, I do not know because I'm not a licensed real estate agent, that those things happen in almost every single real estate transaction. There is going to be hiccups.
Problems.
You just need to accept that reality and go with the flow.
As a real estate agent, I've seen that a lot of these processes that you had to learn, we do them over and over and over again. So it gets easier over time. But whether you're a FSBO, whether you're a real estate agent learning how to do the paperwork, it takes quite a while. It's a learning curve. It's a lot of papers. It's a lot of, legal binding contracts that you need to sign. So I could see how it would be a burden to the average consumer, the average homeowner. What would you recommend for people with W-2 jobs? Would you say that that's something that will stop them from considering that idea? At what point, I guess my question is, at what point does it make sense to pay the commission instead of doing it yourself?
I would say for the vast majority of people, it makes more sense to work with a realtor. They will guide you through a process and help smooth the way. They will help you do that emotional detachment. If you are willing to be infinitely curious, if you're willing to put in the hours to learn how to do it, to tackle it, and even be willing to retreat when you try it and it doesn't work, go for it. I mean, if you're not growing, you're dying. Why not grow and learn how to do real estate? Why not understand it a little bit better, even if you choose in the future to do something different when you sell or buy real estate?
What was your reasoning behind becoming a for sale by owner?
A lot of ours had to do with the timing and knowing that we'd only owned the property that we just recently sold for about 3 years. There was not necessarily a lot of equity in the home. So to pay 6%,
it didn't make sense.
That didn't make a lot of sense for us. We wanted every single little bit. We had done it in the past. I had recent experience working with a realtor through all those different phases of preparing the home, marketing the home, all of that. And I thought, you know what? I can do this. But I already had that background experience of working with a really, really good real estate agent and understanding and asking questions as she helped me. Along with the fact that I enjoy it. I am one of those people that you'll find me on Zillow or Redfin on a regular basis, just looking around being like, oh, well, that property's not worth it. Oh, well, that's not worth it either. The recent home that I just purchased that we're renovating, I looked for over a year and a half, but I didn't look seriously. I just looked to get a feel for what's out there on the market. So I was already curious about real estate. I was willing to learn. I thought already to myself in a recent experience with a real estate agent, I can do this. Paired with Chris's willingness, he's like, I've done this before. We can do this again. We also had access to resources to help walk us through some of those other pieces. The realtor that we used to buy the home that we're renovating was a friend. There were a couple times when Chris reached out and said, hey, this is happening. Is this normal? So we still used the experience of a realtor even in an FSBO. So if you don't have access to folks that can help ground you through the FSBO process and help bring a reality check, again, that emotional piece, FSBO might not be for you. And I've had lots of folks reach out to me since I published that FSBO experience. And I published it because I was frustrated because nobody actually shared what happened in their experience. If I can help someone else, I want to do that. I've had a lot of people reach out to me. Only one that I know of has followed through, of 5 to 6 people that have reached out and said, hey, I want to do this. I don't know what happened to the other folks that reached out to me. I interviewed Sid and his FSBO, and he had the same, this isn't that hard kind of approach. But again, his personality is such, his willingness to learn and do is different as well. He also was in a similar situation to me where he wasn't living in the property that he was selling. And I think that might make a difference as well.
Okay. When you mean that person wasn't living in the property, was a rental?
Yes, so he had the unique situation where he did not need to sell the property in a timely fashion because it was a rental. He had already been moved for his job. They had rented it for a couple of years. He was just flying back to sell the property, get it prepared, sell the property, and move on from there. So there was no urgency of time for him. He was not stressed about the financial pieces of it. He was secure where he was at without having to sell that property.
So what drove you to be a for sale by owner was the time and the willingness to learn.
Correct.
Okay. Why now, from your experience, what's your relationship with realtors?
Not sure exactly what you're looking for with that, but I have no positive or negative. I mean, just like with anything, their experience, their interests, their desires are what led them to where they're at. They are a tool for folks to use in buying and selling real estate. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right tool for everyone. I used a realtor to buy this recent home. I'm glad I did because I had access in a way that I would not normally have had because the system is set up so that the realtors all work together, right? Mm-hmm. In an FSBO, if I had tried to buy the property that I just bought, I would have lost out because there was insight that realtor brought to the table and had conversations or communication with that other realtor that got us the property because it was a multiple bid situation with escalation clauses and back and forth. And you know what, if you just increase your bid this much, then it's a guaranteed. What do you want to do? And we relied heavily on him for his experience in that situation.
Negotiation.
The negotiation piece.
How do you go about that negotiation for sale by owner?
The negotiation of for sale by owner, it was interesting to say the least. Again, you have to remember, this is just a business deal. It's not personal. As a matter of fact, working with the realtor whose buyer did not get the property that we sold, he said that to us. He said, don't worry about this. Like, we were feeling really bad that it worked out, that this other contract worked out. He said, it's just business. It's not personal. This is what it is. And that was really nice that this realtor said, you know what? I get it. You're just selling property. Don't feel bad about this. This is just business. So the negotiation is probably the scariest part, in my opinion, because we are not trained as Americans to be negotiators.
How come?
How many people negotiate for their salary? Have you ever looked up the stat? Very,
No.
very few.
How many?
I can't give you an actual, but I know it's low.
It's low? Less than 50%?
I believe so, yes. At least the last stat that I heard.
Okay.
So it's been a long time since I looked at that stuff. But people are afraid of it. And you go into the store and you just want, you pick up item A, or you know it's a sale, or you've got a coupon. But ask how many people like to negotiate for cars. Most people don't. There are people, though. And if you like to negotiate, maybe FSBO is no problems with that. It'll be just fine. But you have to be willing and be comfortable to negotiate, too.
Do you like to negotiate?
Yeah, I kind of do.
You have that experience.
I don't know that I necessarily have the experience, but I do enjoy the back and forth and the what is in it for you and what's in it for me and how do I expand the pie. And I was exposed to that through a book called Get Paid What You're Worth, which talks about salary negotiation. And I am one of the people that have negotiated my salary because there's always more to it. But you do have to be comfortable with negotiation. You have to be comfortable with putting yourself out there and detaching from the emotional side of the deal. You have to be comfortable with ambiguity and understand that it's not over until everything is signed, sealed, and delivered, and there will be problems in your FSBO.
So
Are you willing to handle that, or do you want someone to hold your hand while you do that?
So in the buyer situation that you talked to me about, it's that commodity, is having a real estate agent a commodity to not have to deal with that stuff.
A real estate agent gave us access in a way that we would not have had otherwise.
I see what you're saying. When you list your property, where do you list it as a FSBO?
One of the mistakes that we made, the first time the FSBO happened, Craigslist was the place, right? Craigslist is still a place, but it's not like what it was back then. Zillow is where we listed it, but Zillow changed their policies right before we put our stuff on the market, and they're making it harder and harder for FSBOs to sell on that platform. You have to know where the toggle button is. You have to be looking for sale by owner. If I do it again, I will go ahead and find some way to get it on the MLS, because the MLS is the gateway to all of the folks using a buyer's agent. I used a buyer's agent. I want access to those folks. And that was a mistake that I made. We narrowed the pool of interested buyers because there are a lot of people that rely on their real estate agent to bring them. They're not interested. They're not going to be found hanging out on Zillow or Redfin or wherever on the weekend. They're going to rely on their agent to find the properties and present the properties to them. So we listed on Zillow. I also posted on Facebook Market. If I had to do it again, I would go and try and find a way to get it on the MLS through a flat fee realtor or some other way. It's worth the $500,000, whatever it takes to get on that MLS listing, because that opens the potential for people to see it, because they are going to be using a real estate agent, especially if you have a home that is of moderate price point. So if you're targeting first-time home buyers with your home, they absolutely, the people that are going to be buying a first-time home buyer, they're going to use a realtor. They've never done it before. They absolutely need the experience of that realtor to help them, guide them through that process. So if you want to put it in front of those folks are relying on a realtor that just puts out a broad search on an MLS. You have to have access to that MLS in order to get it in front of the right buyer.
I see what you're saying. So that's the only thing that as a FSBO you can't guarantee to get. But other than that, you have the experience, you have everything that you need.
You have to understand, as a FSBO, if you don't put it on the MLS or find a way to get it on the MLS, you have immediately restricted the scope of your audience, because not everybody is going to be proactive in finding properties that are FSBO. They're going to rely on their realtor and the search that the realtor puts in the MLS system to find properties.
Okay. How do you now relate with the buyer's agent? What's your process to getting property?
What's my process to buying property?
Yeah, to acquiring. Now it's rentals. That's what you're working on currently.
No, the home that we just bought is going to be hopefully my last home, which is why we're doing all of the renovation work that we're doing on it. I don't necessarily have plans to buy any new property in the near future. I've got enough with the one that I just bought. So you ask about the relationship with the buyer's agent.
Well, I guess if you're not gonna continue to buy properties, that I thought was your initial idea. I thought you wanted to be an investor, a real estate investor, but I guess that will completely change the scheme. That's not something that you're interested at all?
Not at this point in time, because I've got 5 kids at home, and that might be the next career that I do.
Is that something that you're looking to doing in the future?
Certainly, to buy and rent property or flip property. Absolutely.
Buy, rent, and hold. Repeat.
Multiple streams of income
Okay.
through real estate rental.
What advice could you give to FSBOs, for sale by owners, people that are considering, that don't know? I hear what you're saying, Karen, but I'm not quite there yet. Like, I don't know if I should go to a realtor, if I should do it myself. Like, I don't like realtors. Like, what's your advice?
If you are not willing to give the time and be curious, absolutely don't do it. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of learning that's involved. You would absolutely be much better met to use a real estate agent that will guide you through the process, either buying or selling. But if you're listening to this and you're considering it, you probably already have your answer of try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? If it doesn't work, go find an agent. They'll help you. But why not give it a shot? I'm curious, what's your perspective being a licensed real estate agent of FSBOs?
Wow, that's okay. Like, I don't think there's anything that it's gonna come out of my mouth that isn't biased, right?
Okay.
But like when you say, why not just try, right? If you try a FSBO, people see the property in the market. You could get yourself in a lot of trouble, legally obligated to sell a property you didn't want it in the terms that you didn't want. There's a lot of things that could go wrong, right? I guess from my perspective, I'm only focusing on the wrong side of things, because there could be a lot of good things, right? You make more friends, you meet new people, you become friends with the title company, everything could go smooth, but it's a learning curve.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
So if you're only going to do it once, maybe that's some good criteria. If you're looking at FSBO and you only plan to sell 2 properties in your lifetime, might not be worth it.
I would agree with that.
But
Because
if you're looking at it like to, at some point in time, do a lot of stuff in real estate and real estate investing of some sort, absolutely. Take the time to learn. You're going to make some mistakes. You might burn some bridges.
Well, my recommendation in that case will be to get a license. Get trained on how to do it. And then after that, you can decide whether you want to continue to do it in a FSBO way, but you at least have the training and the experience.
I can see the benefits of doing that.
Well, if selling property is something that, because I know, for example, I know a couple of people over here that they buy and then flip, right? Buy, flip, and sell, right? If you're going to have so many properties and so many turnovers, and you're going to sell those properties, you might benefit from being the agent yourself.
I don't know enough of the real estate structure to know how you work with brokers and how all of that works. Because I know, and this is one of the things that folks that I just casually mention, real estate and FSBO and things too, they don't understand that 6%, that 3 and 3 split, that's not going directly to the agent. No. There's a lot of stuff. The agent doesn't see 3%. So to get a license, and this is where I'm not willing to go learn at this point in time.
Fair enough.
I don't know what it takes to get an affiliation with a broker, to establish and make all those connections that are needed, because having a license is not enough, from my understanding right now, to go out and sell homes. You still have to have some of those other connections needed in the real estate world.
Yeah, you need a broker to represent your license. And there are brokers over there that like are going to be willing to have some sort of trade. Most conservative brokers are going to want their part of the commission, right? But I see what you're saying. Like, it wouldn't be beneficial for somebody that has such a business. But for my perspective, I have seen a broker, and I'm not going to say names or anything, but they sell houses. They sell a house like every 2 months, right? And she became a real estate agent, and it was a specific broker that is not going to take commissions out of, they worked out a deal. I'm not familiar with it, but I'm sure that you wouldn't go into that broker if every time you were selling a house, there was so much commission being taken away.
So it really depends on then how much you plan to buy and sell, whether or not you should pursue. Because if I only have plans to sell personal property, it might not be worth it. If I only have plans to buy and hold rental property, and I only want to hold 3 or 4 properties, it might not be worth it.
Yeah. So I think that'll be a good conclusion. Yeah. I wouldn't do it unless I'm looking for a long-term learning curve. If I'm not in real estate, I wouldn't even consider it.
That's fair enough. It's definitely a big learning curve. It's definitely an emotionally challenging process to be a FSBO. And real estate can be very ambiguous. It can be very tough. And you have to be willing to do it not just to save 3%. You have to be willing to do it to expand your horizons and meet people and do other things. That's why I say it's not for the faint of heart. You really have to be willing to dive in deep and be willing to take a knock or two. And if you can do that, great. I would love to hear your experience, because it is interesting to hear other people's experiences.
If there is any FSBOs out there watching this video, how can they reach out to you? How can they?
You can contact me through my YouTube channel, Satisfied Spending, or you can just email me, Karen, at satisfiedspending.com.
Satisfied
Spending.
Satisfied Spending. Gotcha. Well, if you made it this far in this video, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and hit the like button. It really helps us. And I'll see you guys on the next one.